Hello everybody, this is Patty, and most of you probably recognize me as Willie's mother from our YouTube videos where we're always trying to give all of you a good laugh. But today's video is going to be serious. Today's video is my tribute to Willie's predecessor, this beautiful orange tabby by the name of Garfield. Unfortunately, I don't have any video footage of him, but what I have done is I've put together a few photographs so I can tell you his amazing story. Garfield was born on September 20th, 1988. He originally belonged to one of my next-door neighbors, but for whatever reason, he just fell in love with me and ended up spending more time at my house than he did at the neighbor's house. So, in December 1993, when they made the decision to move into a place that didn't allow pets, it was only natural they officially declared Garfield my cat. He had always been indoors, outdoors. He spent by far the biggest part of his time inside, but he did like his little bit of outside time. Here you can see him in the mimosa tree in my backyard. He would climb all the way up to the top of that and watch the squirrels and the birds. And nearly every morning you could find him in that tree watching the sunrise. When I lost him in March of 2012, I made sure to bury him beneath his beloved tree, and I put him on the east side of it so he could forever watch the sunrise. Every spring, he always looked forward to when I would plant my sunflowers in my front yard. Here, in late April 1994, you can see him laying beside the biggest, prettiest, healthiest looking one that came up that year. Yes, Garfield was the joy of my life. All my co-workers knew about him. They would always ask about him, want to see his photograph. They were just about as fascinated by him as I was. And when they found out how big he was, well, guess what? The running joke around my workplace became, "Oh, look, Garfield's bigger than you are." Well, maybe not quite. He did push about 25 pounds, though, in his heyday. And in this picture, I can see where they got that idea, because he was quite the handful. But maybe to give you a more accurate idea of just how big he was, let me just put it to you this way. He was bigger than my toilet. Yes, for whatever reason, he loved to go in there and sit on my orange bathroom rug and sit up tall and look at me like he was thinking, "Look, Patty, I'm bigger than your toilet." I can see that, Garfield, you certainly are, and I'm sharing that with the world now, and I'm sure they love you for it. And just like my Willie, he was such a good sport about letting me dress him up and do things to him to get a good photo opportunity. But now what on this earth possessed me to put a purple wig and pink sunglasses on a 25-pound male cat? I will never know, but as you can see, I did, and he didn't seem to mind, and it was absolutely hilarious. Yes, that's the way our life was. It all seemed to be fun and games, very uneventful, very smooth sailing. All that changed on the night of Friday, August 13th, 2004. That was the night Hurricane Charlie paid us a visit. Hurricane Charlie came roaring into central Florida as a very high Category 4, almost a Category 5 hurricane, with winds of 152 miles an hour. Even though my house was structurally sound, there's very few buildings that can stand up to Mother Nature's fury when it is to that extent. I knew my roof got very badly damaged because I had water pouring into my family room, all kind of things were going on. I was just absolutely terrified because I had never been through a hurricane before. Obviously, Garfield hadn't either, but he stayed by my side the whole time that went on. The next day, I was going to go into my family room and see what I could salvage, and Garfield was determined I was not going in that room. Now, by that I mean he kept wrapping himself around my legs, walking back and forth in front of me. He just wasn't going to let me go in. Well, with everything that had happened, I'm sure I was kind of impatient. My nerves were shattered. I didn't have time to play games, which is what I thought he was doing, although he had never behaved like that before. I was just about to pick him up and very gently put him aside when all of a sudden the entire ceiling just caved in. Razor-sharp pieces of sheetrock, of plaster, everything just came raining down right where I would have been standing. How he knew that was going to happen, I will never know. I don't know if he heard something I couldn't hear or it was just simply his instincts, but somehow he knew that was going to happen and he would not let me go in there. A lot of people think only dogs can be a hero, but I'm here to tell you that is absolutely not true. Garfield saved my life that day. We had 2 more hurricanes in the late summer and early fall of that year, Hurricane Francis and Hurricane Jeannie. Fortunately, they were only Category 1 hurricanes, and while certainly frightening and not pleasant, they did no further damage to my house. Eventually, I got everything put back together, my house back in order, and life continued on much as it had before Hurricane Charlie paid us a visit. Again, things changed on January the 6th, 2005. That afternoon, the unthinkable happened. I heard a big commotion in my front yard. I ran out my front door and I saw a very large, very vicious stray dog attacking Garfield. Fortunately, when I came into the yard, he dropped Garfield and ran, and because I had intervened so quickly, Garfield was not seriously injured. He did have to spend a night at the veterinary clinic, but that was mainly for observation. He had a few cuts and scratches and one very minor puncture wound, but with some antibiotics, he ended up being just fine. However, that scared me so bad, I vowed then and there, he is not ever going outside again. The only problem was he had never learned how to use a litter box. One of the few things he would do when he was outdoors was do his business, and when I made him indoors only, it didn't go too well. I would find his business everywhere but the litter box, mainly on my bed and mainly on my pillow to be more specific. But that was just fine, and I'd just have to clean up because he was not going back outside again after what happened. And just like Willie, exactly 1 month after his adoption, just suddenly got it and started taking to me. Just a little over a month after I made Garfield indoors only, he just got it. I got up one morning, I happened to glance at the litter box, and, well, let me just say, Garfield had used it. From then on out, the rest was history. We had just a little over 7 years after that before things changed again. In February of 2012, February 27th to be exact, just all of a sudden, it just occurred to me something just is not right with Garfield. It seemed like it just happened overnight, but I guess things had been going on that I couldn't see, or maybe I didn't want to see. He just suddenly stopped eating, and it seemed like just overnight he just suddenly started to shrink up into nothing. I took him to my veterinarian, who is probably the most compassionate, most wonderful veterinarian anybody could ever hope to find. But unfortunately, there was nothing really specific that he could diagnose or therefore really treat or change about what was happening. The way he worded it to me was Garfield's 23 and a half years old, which is well over 100 years in human life, and he's simply come to the end of the line. He didn't believe that Garfield was suffering, and he told me just to go ahead and take him home, and nature would probably take its course in about 24 to 36 hours. Unfortunately, that did not happen. On the night of March 2nd, 2012, Garfield went into distress. There was no way I was going to make him wait until 8 o'clock the next morning when my veterinarian was back in his office. So I took him to an emergency veterinary clinic that's open 24/7, and they sent him to the Rainbow Bridge. That night, I believe that Garfield sent me 2 signs that he's in heaven. Now, before I go on any further with his story, let me just please emphasize to everyone, I know some people have different beliefs, different opinions, different feelings on this type of thing, and that is perfectly okay. I respect that 100%. However, in order to tell the rest of Garfield's story, I do have to tell my perception of what I believe happened that night. I've always been a nature girl, so I'm very familiar with what the nighttime sky looks like at different seasons of the year, at different times during the night, and so forth. I can just say when I walked out of the clinic after I had Garfield euthanized, I looked up at the sky and I saw a shooting star that was unlike any I had ever seen in my life. That's really all I can say. I can't really explain how it looked so different, but somehow it did. Again, this is just my perception, but I believe it was Garfield sending me a sign that he was in heaven. There was one other thing that happened that night that also made me believe that. When I got in my car to leave, after I finally pulled myself together enough to drive home, I turned on the radio, and the song that was playing was one of my personal favorites from many years ago. It was a big hit in the United States in 1976. That was the year it was released. The artist's name was Al Stewart, and the name of the song was The Year of the Cat. Was it just a coincidence that that is what was playing on the radio? I'm sure it certainly could have been, but again, my perception was it was not a coincidence. It was a sign that Garfield was in heaven. I'm going to mention this song in my pinned comment in case some of our viewers from other parts of the world would like to Google it and listen to the song that I'm referring to. Over the years, there were several people that had asked me, how did I feel about the dog that had attacked Garfield? Did I hold hatred for that dog? Did I wish that dog would die a horrible death, anything like that? And the answer to that question, truthfully, was absolutely not. I've always been an animal lover. I would never in a million years wish anything like that on an animal. Obviously, I wasn't happy about what had happened, but I understood this was a dog that had probably never been shown any kindness, that had probably been abused at some point, that was basically thrown away in this world. He was simply trying to survive with no concept that Garfield was a beloved pet. I can also say this about the dog. Because this event took place nearly 15 years ago, and this was a very large dog, I can all but guarantee that he is no longer on this earth. And I just feel that that dog is now at the Rainbow Bridge with Garfield, where they play happily together with a new understanding of what each other's life had been like when they were here on earth, and maybe, just maybe, the answer to that lifelong question of why. Why do horrible things sometimes happen here on earth to those who have always been so good? Well, everyone, that pretty much sums up the story of Garfield's life. I thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to watch this video. And if you would please, just do me one tiny little favor. No matter how busy you are right now, please stop what you're doing for just one moment and give your pets a big hug and a big kiss, because they truly are only on this earth for a very short time. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and to Garfield, you'll forever be in my heart until we meet again. Goodbye, Garfield.